Thank you guys for being here. As always, the best way, if you have questions or anything like that, is to just chat in. Aaron and I will have the chat running on our right-hand side. We're going to talk with each other and kind of talk at you guys for a little bit to start. And then, we'll open it up for questions. It's a really interesting topic, obviously incredibly timely. We don't know what's going to happen with buyer agent commission. My best guess is that at a high level, it probably comes down just a little bit, on an average basis, because this was never tracked before. And we've always had, I don't say discounter in a bad way by any means. They serve a segment of the market. So we've always had, discount brokerages like Redfin, a lot of local guys that rebate, but that was never tracked in the past. I don't know if it's going to be tracked in the future. But our firm, for example, our average has been 2.99% buyer agent commission for the past decade. I wouldn't be surprised if that comes down a little bit. There are times it makes sense to work for a little bit less. There are times that we wish we could work for a little bit more. We usually don't get to when that happens. But I don't foresee a crash in what agents are paid. And the reason I think that is because lower fee brokerages have been around for a long time, and they've been a robust part of the market since I've been in the business. When I got started, 2003, there was a company called 1% Realty that stuck around for around a decade or so. And man, I didn't know my value at all. And I was like, man, these guys are going to put us all out of business. Like, why would anybody, pay 3% when they can go to these guys for 1%? And it was because I didn't know anything about anything at the time. Over time, you realize that it's just impossible to provide really, really amazing service for 1%. Like, we've watched it happen. We watched Redfin, which again, I'm not talking about Redfin in a negative light in any way, shape, or form. They came with a really solid business idea. They're going to use technology to provide a really excellent service at a much lower cost. I mean, Aaron, how many tech companies, not even just in real estate, come to the market with that idea, would you say?
You see, what is it? I mean, Jeff Bezos has that famous quote of like, your margin is my opportunity. Exactly. And that works inside of like scalable industries. But, as you were talking, like the core of it is we're consultants and therapists. And it is that, a lot of it, great service. Like, sure, you can hire anyone to open a door for you, but it is about just giving the buyer confidence that they're making the right decision. Certainly, you need to be competent at contracts and a lot of other stuff that is largely scalable, but where that percentage comes in, where that 3% comes in, my opinion, or that market standard, is largely around just that making the buyer feel good about their decision. And that is not who knows, maybe with LLMs one day, but it is just that's not a scalable industry in the way that that our margin is is a competitor's opportunity.
And I want to get to your background because it's really interesting. You have a very unique insight as both what I call a tech guy and also as an agent. And we'll introduce you in just a second. But, to continue using Redfin as an example in a very good way, right? They came in, Redfin has really, really solid technology. Like, when we look at what we're building, we don't copy anything by any means, but we look at like what works. We generally look at how Zillow presents to the consumer, and we look at how Redfin presents to the consumer, because they do a really, really good job. But, Redfin, I think they launched in 2003 or 2004, just say round about 20 years. And when they started, they were super aggressive on pricing. I think they were working for less than 1% when they started. I know it was certainly no more than 1%. And then every year that they've been in existence, they've had to increase their prices. And right now, I believe that they're around 2% on the buy side. And you know what, man? They're still not profitable. So if you look at what can you do at scale, I think they've proven that you really can't do it for any less than 2%, certainly. And they're really trying hard and really chipping away at, can we do it for less than 3%? And that's probably a yes, but I don't think it's much less than 2%. And I think for really phenomenal service, for agents with a ton of experience and, that provide just that 5-star experience to their clients, I don't know if it's any less than 3%. We're going to find out. But this is not, I was talking to Sarah and she said, I just don't think this is a tectonic shift. And I would agree with that. It doesn't look like it's going to be a seismic shift in the industry at all. Anyways, I'm jumping way ahead and I want to introduce you first, Aaron. So can you tell us, like, who are you? What do you do? And then we'll bro out and talk about how we've worked together and all that good stuff. And I'd love to, since we've got a captured audience here, let's like spend a few minutes kind of showing off your product for a minute because it's super impressive.
Yeah, so I'm Aaron Scruggs. I spent back in 2003 in Richmond, Virginia. I got my real estate license and started being a realtor. Uh, that went for, I was a casualty of being young and having misguided notions about what it meant to be a realtor. Did all right. Like I think, in '03, I did a million, a million and a half my first year out. So it was good, but just not for me. Started, at the time I was writing Java code, Virginia's a disclosure state to build out essentially Zestimates, for my clients. Told me my skills were probably better elsewhere. Did startups for 15 years. And then back in 2020, when we got connected in 2018, 2020, I went back into selling real estate. I had a couple $20 million years, and then just
But
part
hold
of
on,
what, yeah.
sorry, man, you skipped over your tech credentials, right? Like you were involved, I think, in
Oh,
an exit somewhere, and what we've talked about, you go over my head big time whenever we start talking about data storage, because you and I are both building proprietary tech that manages, I mean, literally millions of records. So don't sell yourself short. Like, what else have you done in the tech space that is really unique to like you? So
oh no, that was the whole then the magic occurs part of the
okay,
conference now.
don't
So
gloss over it.
uh, several startups. I had a successful, I was CTO of a company, and from 2011 to 2017, 16, 17 here in Austin, called Academic Works.
Cool.
Had a 8-figure exit. That was we service the ed tech space, basically helping universities make scholarships more available to their students, with the astronomical, yeah.
I was going to say, I just have to jump in for a second. I know a bit about the ed tech space. Probably the only other vertical as weird or weirder than the real estate space, I would say. Like just a weird monetization, I think, on the ed tech, because they have these huge budgets, but they seem to be
Mhm,
like super embedded with what they use, and they
mhm.
don't seem to want to make changes because change is hard. Would you agree with that?
Um, yes, I think the motivations are a little different than change being hard. I think the motivation is far more, at least for trying to sell in ed tech, it's far more political.
Okay.
Um, that you know, the phrase "no one ever lost their job" no one ever dreams of being a higher ed administrator when they grow up,
Right.
and so safety is a big motivation for them. And the whole quote of "it never uh, you never got fired for uh, uh, buying IBM" uh, is very true in that space. Along with, if you offer some solution and you're like, hey, you aren't going to need like all of these like this is going to save you so much time. What someone in the sales pitch is hearing is you are about to lose power
I
inside of the
got it.
organization
I got it.
because something that you had control over, you're about to lose. Um, the trick to selling into higher ed, just as a total aside, is it's a very collegial, by definition, system. Is you start with there are these different like regions of the country, and you would go and you would find like the early adopter in that region, and the smaller one trying to make a name for themselves. First, you sell to them, you get them successful, you have them as a referral source, and then you go talk to their sister college, and you essentially like work your way up this spiral. Like first year, it was no one you'd ever heard of. By the fifth year, we'd sold into Stanford, Auburn. Yeah.
Well, I
So,
would say, I mean, you and I have talked about your strategy with Agent Intel, and I'd love for you to, if you can screen share and show it just for a few minutes before we get to like what everybody wants to see, which is the charts. I would say use that strategy with MLSs, right? A lot
mhm,
of, there's a lot of people. I mean, I think Abor's one of them that are very forward thinking. There's also a lot of boards that literally just don't want to lose their job. So once you start proving it out with some of these forward thinking boards, I think that then you'll start seeing
mhm.
like, it's the whole like early adopter, fast follower, market adoption type thing. And I think you'll see similar success. So
That's the approach that I'm hoping for. Identifying those boards can be challenging. I'm thinking of engaging T360.
yeah,
They seem to have a lot of market knowledge in that space.
cool.
Um, so don't want this to be a product pitch, but it is pretty cool. So real quick, like Agent Intel is a storytelling tool for agents, exclusively for agents to answer the question, how's the market? Because that answer entirely depends on who's asking and what market they're asking about. So,
Well, and
in
what we're going to talk about today, right? Where we talk about how does the market perform market wide, and then we dug in and looked at Sun City, right? And I think that's an
Mhm.
excellent example of how the market can differ, pretty wildly whenever you start looking at sub markets. But anyways, back to you. I love your product.
Exactly. Awesome. It's been fun, honestly, having you help me develop this. So one, audience to answer how the market is social media. Here you can build all kinds of different slides, take up-to-date stats. Here I'm using '04 as an example. You can define any market you want. Got a number of different templates you can choose from as well. And you go in to the design phase. I don't think that Netflix is the correct one. The best thing, got tons of uh, licensed content. We'll use that. Beautiful. And publish, and it just creates a slide for you for social media. And then ChatGPT will start filling in some copy on the right-hand side. There you go. Um,
By the way,
so that's, yeah.
when we talk about collaboration, I mean, this is what I get out of it, right? Like I saw how you're using ChatGPT, and so we're building what we call AI powered email templates now, where email templates are great, but they're only effective if agents take a minute to personalize them. And so now we're able to like look at the information about each contact, look at what we're sending them, and then personalize the emails using ChatGPT. So that's what I get out of this, man. Beyond just the fact that it's super fun to collaborate with you, but keep going, keep going.
Um, Second is, let's say you're talking to a buyer and they're trying to evaluate a market. Here you can see a heat map by MLS area of where's appreciating the most versus the least, hot market versus cool markets. BL is actually doing rather well right now. It can be a hard way to look at data, so you can convert that into a bar graph. And of course, look at zip codes, counties, and some other stats here. Last thing I'll show, then let's get into why everyone's here, is property reports. This is when you're talking to either a buyer or a seller to augment a listing presentation. And this just gives you data on different markets. So here we're at 78704, scoped by resale. You can change that up to any market, define your characteristics. Tons of useful data. Speaking of just, how long are things sitting on market? How active are buyers? How
And you
often,
can I'm old
yeah.
school, so when I go on listing presentations, I bring paper with me. Are we going to be able to print
Mhm.
this also?
Yes,
Awesome.
absolutely. And so, yeah, that's a quick view of what Agent Intel is up to. If anyone's interested in learning more, it's not publicly available yet. Reach out to me, though. I'd love to have a conversation, really just collecting different perspectives right now.
And, well, and just to give a pitch too. So I think a double-digit percentage of our brokerage has been using this for months now, and I think with some pretty solid results. I don't know if I told you this, but I used to manually run those statistics on the reports that I send out each month, and I
Hmm.
don't anymore. Now I just go to AgentIntel and I copy and paste over. I mean, I created my own stuff, but it
Hmm.
definitely saves me a good 15 or 20 minutes, and I got pretty fast at it before. So yeah, it's phenomenal, and I personally look at the Austin Metro, and then I look at city of Austin because that's where I live. But if I wanted to drill down to like Northwest Hills, which is also where I live, I could do that. Or if I wanted to look at Allendale, which is where my old house is, you can look at that really, really easily. And then pricing segmentation too is super important, right? I think everybody understands that, we're in a bad market, and the market generally recovers. We always say is from the outside in. I'm sorry, recovers from the inside out, from the bottom up, which just means that, urban core, where there's less inventory, less listings, generally recovers first. But it's also a pricing segmentation analysis as well, because lower priced homes closer to the median generally perform better than luxury,
Hmm.
except in kind of some weird times. And Agent Intel allows you to really look at all of this very quickly. And last thing I'll say about it, 'cause I tend to talk too much, is what I've found is that good agents' intuition is almost always right. So good agents almost always know intuitively what's going on with the market, but you don't want to be that agent that says, "Hey, trust me, I know what I'm doing." You want to say, "Listen, this is what's going on, and then here's data to back it up." And that's what your product allows us to do, and that's what I love about it. And that's why I think you're going to be incredibly successful with this product. So good luck with it, man. And thank you for including us early, because we're having a ton of fun with it. So
Absolutely. Can I hire you to be head of sales, man? You're so good at this.
I, man, I like the brokerage too much. I always think about life, and that's probably one of them. But no, man, I'm having too much fun with the brokerage. Okay, 18 minutes in, and we're finally going to get to what everybody kind of wants to see. We'll tease really quickly. Like let's share screen, and oops, hold on a second. I'm going to need to figure out how I can share screen and show a slideshow. But Aaron, do you want to start talking about the data methodology, all that good stuff, while we're doing this? Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So all of the data is directly from Unlock ABOR. With a Rizzo feed, pulled back all 29,000 listings from 2003. Wanted to look at an entire year uh, to fix against any concerns around just cyclicality inside of commissions or listing performance. Inside of those 29,000, uh, we those are just for the Austin metro area, so the 5 county region, as that's where everything that you know that's where all stats are generally pulled from, and we wanted this to be analogous.
Really quickly, can you see my screen right now? I just wanted to make sure I'm not screwing up on the technical side.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
perfect,
perfect.
perfect. So keep going, and I mean, I will add that we started out looking at all 29,000, and then we discovered that new construction performs really differently than resale. So keep going. Talk about our sort of like path of discovery with the data.
Mhm. Yeah, so we started with just all listings and started breaking it out by different, segmenting it in different ways. Resale versus new construction. We even looked at bonus trends. We went into a specific submarket where the market standard is 2.5% and not 3, uh, and started looking at the data through these different angles. And we realized that I think it was like 9,000 of them were new construction sales, and they performed remarkably different and in ways that we thought were distracting from what most agents would care about. You know, new construction is more apt, it seemed more apt to have success with bonuses or going over 3% than not new construction. And while it's interesting to know that the real value in this data, as you know, as I saw, and I think you'll agree, is a is to know to have data to back up what you intuitively know, and to be able to have something to assist in a conversation with your clients.
Right.
If you're and you know, when you're talking as a a listing agent with a client, telling them, hey, this is how much I think we should offer, uh, that's almost always a resale conversation. So we decided to narrow it down to that,
Well,
to being resales in the 5 county area.
yeah, and so I personally think the conversation is changing from this is how much we should offer to this is
Mhm.
what you should expect, right? And you and
Mhm.
I came upon the idea of a market standard, which is pretty easy to identify, right? And historically, the market standard in Austin has been 3%, except for that submarket that we looked at, Sun City, which I think most people are familiar with, where the market standard is 2.5%. So now that things are changing, right? August 13th for Austin, August 17th for most MLSs, you have to be able to set the expectation with your seller, right? This is what I charge. I personally, as a listing agent, charge 3%, and it's negotiable for among agents, but not for me. That's what I charge. Now, what should you expect to pay on the buyer side? Well, most buyers are going to ask that the seller pay the buyer agent commission, and the reason for that is that buyers are sensitive to their cash to close, whereas sellers are sensitive to their net. So it just makes sense for the seller to pay that. There's other ways to say it. It rolls it into the loan, but at the end of the day, the buyer is not writing a check for this commission. They want to finance it. And what should the seller expect in terms of how that buyer agent commission is going to affect their net? Well, right now, historically, it's 3%. You have a 92%, expectation that that's what you're going to pay. If that changes over time, if the market standard changes, you want to be able to explain that to your sellers. And to jump forward a little bit, do you want to talk to them about our hypothesis regarding market standard commission and seller success?
Um, yes, I also want to talk about confidence in the accuracy of the data. So let's get a chance to get to that as well. Um, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to, when you look at these, the most helpful thing was the Sun City submarket, where market standard is 2.5.
Right.
When you look at the data from Market City versus the 5 county metro area, uh, you see a very similar shape, which is that going not just under the market standard, so not just going under 3% or 2.5%, but going over the market standard, offering more, correlated to less successful listings on every metric. So that's everything from the likelihood to close, the days on market, how much you had to come off your original price to sell it. Across the board, it is just not as successful. Now the fact
Well,
that
I was going to say, and you're going to get to the competency piece, but a good
oh
agent who's truly acting in a fiduciary capacity is not going to advise their client to pay something they don't need to pay. And I think it was surprising in a good way that the higher buyer agent commission performed dramatically worse, right?
mhm,
And I believe it's because it's really bad advice to tell somebody, hey, you should offer a bonus. I think that the good advice is, okay, if you're going to spend that money, let's do it to paint the house, or let's do something else. But back to you, right? I'm sorry to interject, but my brain
oh
just goes
no.
and I can't not talk. So yeah.
Hey, when you look at this, there's this all points to that. This all suggests that it has nothing to do with how much you're actually offering. You know,
Right.
show me agents that are actually hand picking the houses that buyers end up buying, versus show me the agents that set up a search and end up getting Zillow links from their client saying, hey, can we go look at this one? What you offer the buyer's agent does not influence the house that the buyers end up buying. All of this points to the fact that it has to do with the competent, like at its core, the competency of the agent and the reasonableness of the seller. Those two things, and you've got to, you're going to sell the house for as much as you can, as quickly as you can. Without one of those two things, then you start, then you're like, well, what if the seller's like, well, I want to try to make more, so let me try to tweak these things. And yeah.
Well, I would say, and the variables that we can't track, right? You can't track how appropriately priced the listing was until after the fact. You can see how appropriately priced it was based on where it sold in comparison to its original list price after the fact. But beyond that, you can't track, was it staged well? You can't track how well did they prepare it? You can't track, I guess you maybe could track, how easy is it to access, right? If you have a seller that says, oh no, I want to have 24 hours notice to show the property, and they are not in the 2 million plus range in Austin, which is luxury, then you have to tell that person, listen, that's fine, but that is going to hurt your listing. You will probably end up with a lower price and a longer listing if you do so. And most folks choose to make their house easier to access when you have that conversation. But if you have an incompetent agent or an unreasonable seller, they might not make that decision. They might say, oh no, 48 hours is fine, right? Or they might say, oh, well, we're not going to paint this purple house because somebody else is just going to paint it. And a good agent will say, look, that's fine. Somebody might paint this house another color in the future, but you have to neutralize it first in order to get a good result. And, agents don't like hearing this, but selling houses is not really rocket science. Like, you get it all right. And the rocket science is, how do you communicate that to your seller and help them understand? That's what really good agents do, is they communicate. And back to, pitching your product again, when you have data to back it up, rather than just, hey, just trust me because I've done this for 20 years. That's whenever you can really effectively help people understand what they need to do in order to sell the house. So,
we should do a follow-up one on these, and we'll have to figure out how to exactly get this data. But I bet if we pulled in all the lease data as well, it would be really interesting to be able to share with sellers that have a tenant in the house and are like, hey, let's try to list this thing, to sell this thing, but I want to keep rental income as this is going on. That doesn't happen, that I would say that conversation came up for maybe 1 out of every 10 listings I do. And it was always just so painful. And to be able to show the data on that would be really helpful.
I saw a meme the other day, and I think it was from Dodgeball or something. I forget the actress' name. She's hilarious. And it said, anytime you pitch showing properties to tenants, and it said, I'm going to create an environment so toxic, right? Because most tenants, they're paying to live there. They're not paying to show the property. And, anytime somebody tells me, hey, I'd like to show this property, I'd like to sell the property with a tenant in it, I say, look, every now and again, you get a tenant who's great for that. I would say 99% of the time, you are going to lose so much money by, having a poorly shown listing, that it just get them out of there, and then make it easy to show, make it look nice. And you'll get so much more on the sales price than you will, save by having a tenant in the property. And you're right. We can find that data because you have the showing instructions that we can crunch by. And if the showing instructions say or occupant says tenant, my gut is that those are going to perform about as well as the 4% listings that we looked at. So.
Yep. I believe that. A data point.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. What were you going to say?
So I want to dive into data accuracy and some of the data that we don't have access to as well.
Okay.
Going to get a little nerdy very briefly. Eric, you showed that pie chart that showed just how that so much of the pie was 3%. And a skeptical individual will say well, how can, isn't that going to just overwhelm the numbers for everything else in a way that you can't really compare? And the answer is, we thought about that, we worked on that, and we addressed that. To get super nerdy, in statistics, there's this phenomena known as the central limit theorem that basically states that if you have if you take a large data set, so let's say all sales under 2% ever, and you're able to, and you sample 30 of them, it is probable, highly probable, statistically relevant that the median number there is going to match the median number of the entire data set. That is if you get a sample size of 30. For all of these numbers, that number was at least 30. And for the vast majority of the numbers, it went well beyond 30. Right. That is all to say that the data you are looking at here, regardless of the amount, the number of 3% listings versus 2%, is all statistically significant.
Thank you for pointing that out, because smart people are naturally skeptical, right? And it's very good to question anything you look at. And I mean, thank you for the folks out there who did question the data, because Aaron and I looked at it and said, how can we make sure that this is completely defensible? And I mean, you did this mostly, right? Like, you just bounced it off of me, and I think it's completely defensible. I don't see any scenario where somebody could poke a hole in this and say, hey, this data is not good. The data is completely sound.
There's another note, but I'm going to wait till we get to the over 3% listings to bring it up.
Let's
dive into that.
Well, you and I mean, our calls can always go on for hours if we want them to. So, yeah, let's dive in. Let's give the people what they want and start talking about this. And to preface this, we have a 9-page report that we're going to send to everyone. We greatly appreciate everybody sharing it as much as you would like to in its entirety. We don't want people to cherry pick specific charts, because we don't think that specific charts taken out of context will tell the whole story, right? But we do think that this report in its entirety tells a very good story. So let's get started. Do you want to narrate kind of as we go? You can kind of tell us what we're looking at. Does that sound good to you?
I'll do my best. Let's just kind of do it together. Yeah.
Okay. No, that sounds great. We'll convo as we go. Okay. I'm going to share, and I'm going to do the same thing I did a second ago. Oops. Slideshow. There we go. So you can see my screen right now. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So I'll start. Go ahead, Aaron. You start.
What happens when you have two very polite people on a podcast together? So here, here you're looking at, and it's confusing when you're saying, hey, here's the percentage that is offered to the buyer's agent, and here's what percentage of people offered it. And so with each one of these, you are looking at how often that percentage commission was offered to buyers. So the vast majority of this pie is 3% was offered to buyers 92.3% of the time. 5.7%. We did the range of 2.1 to 2.99. It is, for all intents and purposes, it's 2.5%, right? But there were some outliers there, and we thought it would be just more useful to share that as a range. And again, right, we were very... Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, when people see that, just in your mind, convert that to 2.5. So you've got 3% offered 92% of the time, 2.5% offered just under 6% of the time, 2% or less under 2%. Now, what's interesting about this is these are all sold listings. So, or are they? Does this include the withdrawals and expireds as well on this? Do you remember?
It was, this was only sold. Yeah.
Okay. Well, and then to jump forward, so then we have seller success. And do you want to explain what seller success is here?
Yeah. So in seller success, this is how long did it actually how often did it get sold versus being expired or withdrawn? And here you can see that, homes, listings under 2%. Yeah, close to 64% of the time they sold, and it isn't that huge of a swing as you step up, right? Like you're going from 60 64 to 61 to to 67 to 68, give or take. That it's not that big of a swing here, but there is definitely a correlation between offering market standard rates and the likelihood of it selling. Where this gets really interesting is when we start looking at these kind of stats, which is how long did these listings sit on the market? Under 2%, you're 130 days. 2.5%, you're sitting under 50, and at 3%, you're right at around, was it 30?
Yeah, it was 33, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think I mean, if I had to pick one slide, which I wouldn't want to do, obviously, but this one I think tells the story the absolute best. And what I think it shows is that people that want to offer a lower than market standard also want to buck the important variables in other ways, right? I want to offer less than market standard commission. I want to pay less than market standard commission. I also don't want to paint my home. I also want to make it difficult to show the property. Summarizing it all into either an incompetent agent or an unreasonable seller, they're not checking all of the boxes in order to get the home sold. And it just takes longer, right? If you don't do these things that help you sell your home, it's going to be a longer and more painful process. And I think this slide does a really good job of showing that.
Agreed.
Sold to original list price. Yeah.
This is the slide that I would show to any seller that's talking about wanting to offer less than 3%. Because they're going to take a steeper hit on what their close price is than they would have if they'd have just offered market standard rates. Here you can see, yeah.
Well, I was going to say that's one perspective on it. Another perspective is that these folks probably overpriced the listing to begin with, right? So they probably got pricing wrong and then got a number of other things wrong. But if their expectation going into this, let's say the home comps out at $500,000, right? So a good agent looks at this and says, hey, Aaron, your home is going to sell for $500,000. We need to price it at $500,000 or whatever the convo is. An incompetent agent or an unreasonable seller is going to say, well, that's fine, but I want to price it at $550,000. And the agent who, doesn't know how to explain things says, okay, fine, I'll take the listing at $550,000. Then that seller also probably says, well, I also, I want 24 hours notice to show the house, or I want to keep a tenant in, or any number of things that are just not good decisions. But here you go. Here's the net result. You're just not getting the price that you expected. You expected to pay a lower than market standard commission. You expected to do other things that are painful that would help you sell your home, that not do those things. And here you go. Here's the net result. You're not getting the price you expected.
I agree. And I think there's this balance in talking to a potentially unreasonable seller and resetting those expectations of, what we see and what we have is correlation. And there is the balance of saying of how you present that information to a potential seller.
From a strategy,
I don't want to say, yeah, go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say, we talk about this a lot. I'm a big fan of the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, but you can't in real estate, because we do a relatively small number of transactions compared to other industries. You're doing a really good job in real estate. If you're selling 2 homes a month, you're probably in the top 5%. If you're selling 1 home a month, I know you're in the top 10%. So, if you have 1 fewer sale a year, well, that's almost 10% of your income. So you can't say we're just going to carve out the 20% of our customers who are painful. So we have what we call a modified Pareto principle. And we say that 80% of your customers are a joy to work with, and it's easy to explain stuff to. 20% are difficult, and you have to figure out who's difficult but manageable versus who's completely unreasonable. Now, people who are completely unreasonable, we just don't work with them, period. Get them out of your life. But when people are difficult but manageable, it just takes you a little bit more time to explain things, and you probably have to show them the 9-page report that you and I put together. But you can convince those people to do what's in their own best interest.
Yeah, agreed.
What are we looking at here?
Yeah, this one I would consider to be more anecdotal than informative. And this speaks to, hey, what's the cost per square foot? And we went with cost per square foot because to just normalize for the different sizes of properties. But typically,
We also did this one though, and it looks the same.
yeah, yeah. What you see here is that, hey, typically the homes that sell for more sell closer to market standard rates.
Yeah. All good information. And I think we could probably stop here, and most agents would say, great, I have what I need. I can now inform my clients. But you and I are pretty intellectually curious, and so we took it a step further. And what are we looking at right here?
All right. So here we get into the offering over 3%. We took that same data set, but we added those that chose to list for over 3%. You'll notice that the other numbers adjusted down slightly to create this small sliver of 0.7, so just under 1% of listings that were listed for over 3%.
Which this will be, so that small sliver, the 0.7%, to get back to data accuracy, that's going to represent 1,500 listings, give or take. So well over the threshold of 30 in order to get to statistical significance.
Yes.
So here's the fun chart. What are we looking at right here?
So this one is the likelihood to close. And it falls off a cliff at over 3%. Here is where I want to speak to data that we don't have access to and what I think is happening. And Eric, to throw your curveball, this is not something I've shared with you yet.
But I would love to hear it.
So in this situation, we don't have changes to the commission being offered being available inside of the data set. That's not something that MLS exposes. You just have what that last commission offered was. And as we're speaking to correlation, not causation, I would be willing to bet you a shiny nickel that over 3% most of the time didn't start there. What you had was a seller that had. There are other stories, but I'm going to paint one that I think is going to resonate. You've got the seller that had some unreasonable expectations around the price they wanted to get for the property. It wasn't working out well. You as the listing agent, you go in there and you say, hey, it's time for us to consider a price adjustment. And the response by the seller is, well, as opposed to dropping the price by 5%, how about we just drop it by 2.5%? Offer the buyer's agent 5%, a half point more, and that way I can end up netting more. But it'll attract more buyer's agents. But going back to the beginning of this conversation, it's just not how property discovery works.
Well, so I would say to this, and it's easy to paint the seller as the bad guy, and oftentimes it is the seller who is driving the conversation, which certainly I would never work with a seller who gets to make all the decisions. This sounds kind of like a jerk thing to say, but it comes from a good place. Anytime you are talking with a seller, the least qualified person to make a decision is that seller. I have sold 1,000+ homes in my career. That person has likely sold no more than 4 or 5. Maybe if they've even sold 10, It's a fraction of the experience that I have and that I've thought about. And so the agent needs to be able to assert their opinion and their expertise. I've had many conversations from reasonable people that I say exactly what you just mentioned, which is, hey guys, it's time for a price reduction. We've been on the market for 30 days, 45 days, whatever it is. And, in a $500,000 price range, generally speaking, you make price drops in a $10,000 increments. You're exposing to more people. And a reasonable seller will say, well, why don't we consider an agent bonus? And then I explain to them what you just said. The property discovery is not the agent's job. It's automated. And if an agent does a bad job of setting up those searches, the client just goes to Zillow or any other number of portals, and they're discovering which properties they want to see. If it were effective to offer a $5,000 bonus rather than make a $10,000 price reduction, I would certainly recommend you do that. I want you to net as much as you possibly can because I want a good review from you and I want referrals from you in the future. That's my self-interest that is involved in me wanting to do an amazing job for you, right? Unfortunately, it doesn't work. And I think what you're seeing here on these over 3% listings, I think that your intuition that these didn't start as over 3% listings is probably correct. And I think that it's a seller who's come up with an idea that on its surface, it sounds like a great idea. And it's either an unreasonable seller who won't listen to a good agent, or it's an agent who doesn't know how to explain, hey, this is a bad idea, and we probably just need to make a price reduction. That's what I see.
Can we go back to that slide real quick? As there's some,
there we go. Yeah,
there's some data that we didn't include in the report that I think is interesting to share, and this is part of why we chose to focus on resales. So in 2023, over 3%, that was a total of 146 listings total for resale. But in new construction, there were 1,300 listings that were over 3%. And if we hadn't had parsed this out, that new construction over 3% would skewed these numbers to the point that at over 3%, new construction, their success goes up to 90%.
Right. Well, because new construction, they have no utility. They're not going to live in the house if they can't sell it. They're certainly not going to rent the house. They need this off their books. They're making decisions the same way that an LLM would make their decisions. How do I get this asset off of my books? And resale sellers have different variables in their considerations. They can continue living in the house. They can put the property up for rent. They behave differently than investors, the new construction builders do.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, yeah, like with this, it was just fascinating to see that with new construction, because their motivations are, I have to sell it, going over 3% more indicates that motivation that, man, I have to get rid of this. Which if you are, so as a side note, if you're a buyer's agent taking your buyer to go preview new construction, and they're deviating more favorably than market standards, it means that you are probably in a position to beat them up on price more.
You certainly are. And going back to, the old way of doing things and the new way of doing things, whenever a new build is in the MLS, if they offer 4%, they have to pay that 4%, right? Now, there are many, many, many business models that rebate the majority of the commission back to the buyers. I don't know if we have a method to track that in the future. I really wish we would, because at that point we could see, what is the market standard commission on these different segments. Knowing how the market operates, my guess is that the overall net commission to an agent is lower than 3% on new builds. That's just knowing how many of these rebate brokerages exist in that market. Next one. Aaron, are you there?
Cool. Yep, I'm here.
Awesome. I've got the screen sharing, so I can't see you. Days on market. So over 3%. What do we see here?
No surprise. You are well past 200 days on market. And I bet there's that threshold here where, at that like 150 mark, is when the conversations around, hey, let's up that commission offering happens.
Yeah, I think they're just negotiating with themselves. I don't want to
Mhm.
do what needs to be done to sell this house. Maybe they think poorly of agents. Who knows? These agents are all greedy. We're just going to offer them more. But at the end of the day, here's hard data that shows you it just doesn't work, guys. Unfortunately, you have, one lever to pull. If you've done everything correctly leading up to listing the property, it's marketed well, it's been prepared well, staged, all the good things. You're making it easy to show. Your only lever, guys, is really price. And agents don't like to hear that because we feel like we have to bring more to the table than that. As a listing agent, I would always tell sellers the majority of my work is done prior to day one. Day one is whenever we continue communicating, and we do make adjustments to price if we need to, but there's not a whole lot we can do other than that. I can't, if spinning a sign in a chicken suit in front of your house were effective, I would do it or pay somebody to do it, right? But unfortunately it's not. And guys, we've got price. That's really it. That's my take on this.
Agreed. And this points to the same thing that they were, you are at 18% off your original list price at that over 3% range. And it is important to note that this was done in 2023, uh, which is to say that these numbers have the most value relative to each other.
Right.
And so it is worth noting that you're at under 5% versus over 18%. So you are looking at a what 13% swing and coming off your original asking price.
I mean, you're basically 3 times less successful, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's 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 pretty, it's undoubtable that
Mhm.
you offer a market rate commission, or in the new, I think David said the new world order. It's all about
Mhm.
expectations. What should you expect to pay? You should expect to pay the market standard. To deviate on the conversation a little bit, I hope to pay the market standard commission. I would much rather have a competent, good agent on the buyer side when I'm listing a property or personally selling a property than not. Your
Mhm.
success rate goes way up when you have a good agent on the other end of the deal. And understanding what that good agent is going to be paid is incredibly important for your sellers.
Agreed.
I feel like the last couple of slides are a little bit boring, but they're important to show. This just shows you that by the numbers, you're going to sell for a lower price per square foot if you go over 3% and obviously under. And then it shows you that your overall median sold price is also going to be lower. I wish we were in a live room right now because I would ask everybody to raise their hand if they enjoy selling in Sun City. When you have a market standard that's a higher rate, and then all of a sudden you get a client that wants you to help them in a sub market with a lower rate, it doesn't feel very good. And you have to make a decision: am I going to continue working with this person or not? Agents are naturally pleasers. They naturally love to help
Mhm.
people succeed and provide really great service. So saying no to somebody doesn't feel very good. It's also a half a point difference. So most people say, fine, I'm going to go ahead and work in this market. I will go ahead and earn less. Side note, it will be very interesting to see what happens now with the new practices. I will have a 3% buyer rep agreement with every person that I work with. My guess is that with this new standard, I'm sorry, with this new process whereby agents are instructing what they're earning and they are making it part of their offer that they want the seller to pay this fee. My guess is that you're going to see those commissions actually rise a little bit in Sun City. I could be wrong. I mean, predictions are dangerous, but that wouldn't surprise me if that were to happen. But onto it. What are we looking at here? This is the distribution. Aaron, what do you see?
Yeah. So this was a incredible insight that you offered. Like I always specialized in South Austin, Central Austin. I had no clue that this was a phenomenon. I did not know that there were you know, areas out there where the market standard had deviated from 3%. So here we are looking at Sun City, which is a subdivision up in Georgetown, is it?
Right. It's a
Uh,
55 plus community. And to
mhm,
give you a little background on it, sorry to take over, there
please
are
do.
a couple of really competent, really successful teams that are up there. And when they came in and attacked the market, and this was before my time, so this is like a tale of lore, right? They came in and
Mhm,
attacked the market by telling their clients, "We're going to charge you less. You're still going to succeed." And they drove down the commission by doing so. You know, we've heard people say like, "Oh,
mhm,
collusion, blah blah blah." No, guys, this is like a really solid business strategy. Not one that I want to do, by the way. I have tried to offer
mhm,
lower rate commissions, 20 years ago, and it just wasn't something I wanted to do. But these guys, they took the market. And my guess is that this 69% that's offering 2.5%, my guess is that these two teams make up the vast majority of that. Probably of this 69%, these two teams are
mhm,
probably listing like 65%. 65 of the 69%. That would be my guess.
mhm. Yeah. And here you can see that, and this might be the only place I would have to look into it where we deviated from, yeah, well, the only place where the data lacks statistical relevance in the entire report is under 2% inside of Sun City.
I think it
There, that count is, there were three,
right is low. Yeah.
2% and under. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the interest of 100% transparency and data integrity, when you look at the 2% and under in Sun City, you can probably say, um, not maybe relevant. But the very interesting comparison here is the 3% versus the 2.5%. That's what's really interesting
Absolutely.
to me. And here we go.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it is interesting that even that very small sliver really tells the same story, which is that sellers are going to have the most success listing at market standard rate, regardless of what that market standard is.
Agreed.
You go over 3%, you're less, you go over the market standard, you're less likely to be successful. You go
I
under the
think that's
market standard, you're less likely to be successful.
so. I don't know. I would call it a correlation rather than a
Mm,
causation. And I
yeah.
think that okay, so if I, Eric Bramlett, go into Sun City, I'm not the most competent agent in that market. I can probably get it done.
Mm,
I can more than likely help that person have a really great result. But if I go in there and I say, well, out of habit, we're going to offer 3%, I just did a disservice to my client. That client literally just
mm,
lit half a point on fire. There's no reason to do it in Sun City. If you offer the market standard
mhm.
2.5%, you should take that 0.5%, either put it in your pocket or use that money to improve the listing and make it show better. So I would look at this as a correlation of competence. Whenever you're in Sun City, you only need to offer 2.5%. You're throwing money away if you go over that.
Entirely agree.
Days on market, highest performing is 2.5%. And sorry to kind of
Mhm.
burn through this. I just feel like we've told the story pretty well. Um,
Yeah, on every vector possible,
every metric.
it's
Yeah.
proven true.
Right. And that's why we can confidently say that a higher commission paid doesn't mean more success. You want to go with the market standard. You want to do what works. I say that all the time. It's literally I should probably get it tattooed somewhere. You do what
Mhm.
works to get a great result. And here you do 2.5%. In the Austin Metro, it's 3%. But understand the submarket. I would love, and I think the data is probably not easy to get. I would love to see the luxury market at some point in time. It's an interesting
Mhm.
phenomenon to me that 3% tends to hold true no matter what price point you are in.
Mhm.
I have theories on why that's the case. I think that more experienced agents naturally gravitate to higher price points. Not all of them,
Mhm.
but many of them do. And if you talk to an agent who has tons of business, who sells 50 homes a year, they will have a minimum price point at which they're willing to work. And they will earn 3% on any given price point. Total deviation on
Mhm.
the subject, but it is something that could be interesting if we could get a hold of the data and look at it. Median
A lot
sold
of
price
that
per
data, yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
median
yeah.
sold price per
Uh,
square foot, two and a
mhm.
half percent performs the best. And obviously, oh, looks like I missed a slide, Aaron. Sorry about that. But you guys, it's in the report. Trust me, the median sold price is the highest in
Mhm.
Sun City whenever you offer
Mhm.
2.5%. So
So could we say
it's
that the lesson learned from going over market standard rates is mo money, mo problems?
I love it. I think that's great. And that'll resonate with everybody who's around our age or older. Sorry to all the Gen Zs out there. That's a reference to P. Diddy, who is righteously being canceled right now. But he had a wonderful song in the 90s called Mo Money, Mo Problems. And I love the reference. I think it's amazing. Man, this is so much fun, dude. I can't wait to dive in with you. I mean, hopefully, as long as you want to continue doing these. I'd
Yeah.
love to start putting reports together on different topics, a couple of times a year. Open questions. We're at an hour right now. I'd love if anybody would like to chat in any questions. The other insights, Aaron, what do you think? I mean, is there anything else here? I mean, I feel like it's a relatively easy concept that you really have to prove. Like when you tell somebody, look, you need to pay market standard, it sounds pretty self-serving. Like, oh, he's just being lazy. He's just telling me to do this because. But we have 9 pages of report with 18 charts to show that, like, it's not me being lazy. It's not me just operating on my gut. This is how listings perform. So,
Yeah. So, why did we decide to do this now? This data is about to disappear because of the NAR settlement.
right.
And I have heard so much from so many agents that the sky is falling. And every couple of years, the sky is falling thing.
Agreed.
And it, like, I'll bet shiny nickels to everyone that the process is going to change a little bit, but this is an exciting thing to talk about. If it bleeds, it leads, but I don't think it's going to affect the agent's bottom line all that much. Like, I don't think it's getting a lot of attention. The data is going to disappear, so it's a good time to do it. But the reason why everyone's here is because of this change. And I guess the real message is that it's not going to affect your bottom line.
I don't think so. And David, I think it's Schneider, who I love to death, keeps calling it the New World Order, which I disagree, man. I mean, this looks to me like some extra paperwork. We've gone over that. I've spent, I come across as a relatively laid back, maybe lackadaisical guy. And a secret that everybody can now learn is that I am not at all. Like, I'm a very anxious, worried person who spends a lot of time trying to quell that anxiety. And I've spent a lot of time looking at this. And this is some confusing paperwork that will become less confusing the longer we do it. And I would bet a shiny nickel with anyone in this room that your bottom line will not change very much. You're going to have conversations, and you might end up working for less than 3% more often than you did in the past. But those will be outliers. And Aaron, I'm so excited that you're in the Innovation Hub with me. If anybody is not aware of it, Mike Del Preti's Real Estate Innovation Hub is like my favorite thing in the real estate industry. And I went to it in January. It was the first one he ever did. And now he's formalized it, and Aaron's also in it. Mike talks a lot about what he calls the Del Preti probability paradox. And to summarize it, what it means is that people tend to worry about things that are very unlikely. And it is a highly unlikely event that buyer agents go away. It's almost an impossibility. It's highly unlikely that their pay structure changes very much at all. But it's very, very worrisome. And it's something that can cause a lot of anxiety and fear. And that's why it's discussed so much. And if you guys want to do yourself a favor, I'm linking to a talk he just did at Inman about the probability paradox. And I would love for everybody to watch it and just kind of internalize it and just go, you know what? I'm worried about it because it could be highly effective to me and it could be really bad for me. But that doesn't mean that it's likely. I don't think I'm wrong. I think I'm right that this is probably not going to change things very much. If it does, you certainly want to plan for that contingency. But if you're spending a lot of time on that contingency, you are losing money. And the reason you're losing money is because your time would be much, much better spent working your SOI. If you're good at open houses, working open houses. If you're good at working internet leads, working internet leads. The things that will move the needle for you are the things that have always worked, right? Spend some time thinking about the contingency. I had a great conversation with my mentors a week ago about what would we do if the pay structure truly changes. And I said, if it truly changes, we will pivot. No question about it. We will not go out of business. We will change the way we do business. I don't think it's likely. I've thought about it, and I know what I'm going to do if it happens. Moving on, getting back to what works.
Yeah.
That's what I recommend everybody here does.
To jump in at some of the questions I'm seeing in the live stream, Nicole is asking about, is there going to be any way to get at what that commission paid was? I believe, and I haven't, because it's not core to the problems I'm solving, this has been more fun and anecdotal for me. I believe there are going to be new fields that are not quite as direct. And what I'd love to do with you, Eric, is do a follow-up in about 6 months or so, looking at what data is available now and what trends we're able to parse from that.
So you and I should probably pitch Emily and Stan about this. If it's not terribly difficult, I would love to have this data tracked. I've thought about it a lot. And if the data truly disappears, like what agents are getting paid, I think we can probably get some okay data by running polls. Some well thought out surveys might help a bit. I am more than happy to share our internal data. We're big enough that, our data is very relevant. And I'm happy to share with everybody that in the past, our average buyer agent commission has been 2.99%. Does that change from this point forward? Probably. It probably goes down. My best guess is the average goes down to 2.75. That's what I'm guessing. That's what I'm planning for my business. But yeah, man, I think we can come up with the data. I'd also like to come up with some really cool stuff. I want to know how pools perform versus other homes, right? I'd like to know, if urban core, how it performs versus like amazing neighborhoods in the suburbs like Crystal Falls. I'd love to look at this stuff. I'd love to be able to talk about it. And man, I don't have the time to do this. And Aaron, you've built a really amazing tool that does it. So let's start putting these reports together because this is a ton of fun. So
I'm in.
Cool.
The luxury market, as there's been a good deal of chatter about that, as a lot of a lot of that doesn't happen on the MLS. That for a number of reasons, a decent amount of that action occurs off market. There's not. Hey, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'll do you one better on that. Commercial guys, which I do not work in commercial at all, probably for this reason. What they always say is by the time it makes it to CoStar, it's a dog, right? Like if they haven't sold it off market, then it probably is not a great listing. Luxury, what I've certainly observed is that it makes a ton of sense to float luxury listings off market initially at a higher price. And then if it doesn't sell, you then go to MLS. That's why this would be a really fun one to look at. I think if you look at the volume of listings on the market now versus 2021, 2 million plus, it's going to have skyrocketed. My gut is because they're not able to sell them off market because really nothing is selling like it was in 2021. But if you look at like a normal market, if we were to go back to call it 2019, which is a normal market, I think that you would see the luxury probably performs not great. And that's because the data isn't something that I personally trust by the time it makes it to the MLS. I wish it weren't the case that it's a smart strategy to float luxury listings off market first, but it is. Whenever we take luxury listings, that's really a strategy that we recommend. Like, hey guys, let's float this at a higher price first, see how it does. It's not going to hurt our chances once we go on the market at what we think might be the price that it ultimately sells at. And you know what? We sell them a lot of times off market early, or we wouldn't recommend it.
So I've got a fun anecdote about off-market luxury. This was at the height of like 2022. A friend of mine selling his house, and beautiful home, completely remodeled in Barton Hills. The comps did not support it going past 2.5 million on its best day. I was like, hey, let's just float this on ALN, got it on the tour, listed it off market at 2.7, sold at 3.3. And it has to do with the scarcity principle. Like you're going to get access to this before the general public does. So you are going to need to pay a premium for it. And then if you have a bidding war in the off market, the percentage you can go over asking is remarkably larger.
I'm a massive fan of observing what works and just doing that. Like the way I look at it is like, I wish I made the rules, but I don't. And so we do whatever works. And what you just described is not a one-off. That happens quite often. And if you want to sell luxury, certainly become familiar with this. I mean, it's just what works in luxury. So Robert said, I'm told in Australia, and this is a kind of a deviation on the convo, but I want to talk about it because I kind of know about this. He says, I'm told in Australia, once the contract is executed, a low-level lawyer handles the entire process. All homes are auctioned in Australia, I'm also told. And Robert also says these agents outside of the US do everything we do. So I've talked with lots of folks. One of our managers, Steve Crossland, spends a good amount of his time in Mexico. He probably spends 6+ months in Mexico. He's tried to buy in Mexico, and he said the experience was miserable. And the experience was miserable because, one, the agents do try to do a whole lot, but they don't have a centralized database like we have. And they can't do as much as we can. We have unlimited inventory whenever we're talking about most markets in the United States. Australia, really good friend of mine. Shout out Dan Corkle. Couldn't be happier for the guy that he literally exited his company at $500 million last year. Follow up, boss. And Dan and I have been on multiple road trips together where we talk about all kinds of things. And because he owns a real estate CRM and I'm a real estate broker, we tend to talk about real estate a decent amount. So Dan's from Australia, from the Gold Coast. And how does it work there, right? 100%, everything goes to auction. And it doesn't sound like a very fun experience. Buyer agency is just gaining a foothold there because buyer agency is very, very pleasant. When things are in Australia and they go to the auction, sometimes they don't sell. When they don't sell, they then go to an open market like we have. And Dan's bought properties here. He's not bought in Australia. I don't mean to give too much away, but I've asked him, like, how is the experience here, right? Very pleasant. You've got a buyer agent that, helps you from start to finish. Showing the properties is easy. You're not doing is showing up to a freaking auction and going like, oh my God, I have to make a decision right now. Otherwise I'm going to miss this house. It's not a fun experience. Guess what? It's a lot cheaper in Australia than it is here, but you're not comparing apples to apples. You're comparing like apples to bowling balls really in that scenario. When I've talked to Steve about Mexico, apples to oranges. When I talk to friends who've bought in Europe, apples to bananas, I don't know. But the experience here, by and large, when you work with a good agent, you have a good experience. Even if things don't go as planned, your good agent helps you and people by and large have a good experience. Steve punted on a condo in Mexico he was going to buy. He didn't have any sort of confidence that the deal was going to go well. And he got nervous, rightfully so. He didn't have a good agent there guiding him through the process. What I would propose to everyone here and everybody watching is that good agents in the US provide the best experience in the world. I truly believe that. And we're also the most expensive in the world. There are agents in the market who provide minimal service. Happens. There's 15% of the market segment that would prefer to pay less and get worse service. By the numbers, that's what happens. Those clients will continue to be served. And what I would propose to everyone here is those are not your clients. If you offer full service, you can't also be the cheapest. Just can't do it. So if you meet somebody who wants the cheapest, don't work with them. They're not your customer. Find somebody who wants full service, who's willing to pay for it. Get off my soapbox now. Sorry about that.
No, I'm yes to that. Like, as my experience has been, is that when a client wanted to come off of market standard rates on either side, it was also a ton more work. And when you look at the amount more work that you would do and the amount less that you would make, and you then take that back into what if I would have spent that time prospecting? I don't think I'm a good fit for you is a very profitable phrase.
Right. Knowing how to say no, it's super important. Like, I didn't learn how to say no until probably 10 years ago. And that's kind of when the business took off, because I realized, like, when you say no, it opens up your time to do what actually works. And so as a simple dude who tries to just remember a few things, I try to remember what works. And then by definition, everything else doesn't. And we just say no to that. And working with, cheapskates is not what we do. We just don't do it. We provide really amazing service, and this is what we charge. And just understand how to say that. And you're right, the numbers are big, but it's also the biggest purchase that most people ever make. And it's really, really important to them. And they're willing to pay for it. When I bought, outside of the Austin market in Colorado, actually where I am right now, I sure as heck used an agent. Like, no question I was going to use an agent. And what happened with that is that when we found the house we wanted to make an offer on in 2019, I said, well, hey, what do we offer? I'm coming from Austin. I'm like, what do we offer over, right? Or like, okay, we're just giving them lists, right? Said, no. We can offer about 5% below list. And I think you're going to be able to get it for 3 or 4% below list. I literally saved more money by using that agent than if I tried to do it on my own, and had a way better experience, by the way. Shout out Mike Knapp in Pagosa Springs. He's an awesome dude. And his agent did a really great job for me whenever I bought the house. And sure as heck, whenever I buy another house someday, I will use an agent in that submarket because I'm not an expert, right? If there's anybody in the world that would be qualified to buy in another market, I'm one of them. And I won't do it because you need that market expertise on top of, the sort of process expertise. And I'm not going to try to put my hand in their pocket. I don't want them to give me worse service than they would anybody else. Off my soapbox again. So.
Could you pull up the seller success slide for over 3%? Is that easily available?
Yeah, for sure. 1 second. Let me find it.
Because I think there's with this, I think there's a kind of, I don't know how close we are to wrapping up, but an important point.
I mean, we can go as long as you like, or we can wrap whenever you'd like to.
Me too. My schedule's clear till 11. Yeah.
I usually wrap whenever people start falling off. That's usually whenever we decide to wrap. So,
all right, guys, at least stay on for this point.
For 30 more seconds.
Yeah. So seller success, the likelihood of selling. This is why no thank you, or I don't think we're a good fit, or I'm not the right agent for you, is valuable. When you look at that deviation, that is when everything's, that's money out of your pocket and time out of your day. Listing photography.
I'll piggyback off of that. Look at days on market. So not only do you have a lower likelihood of success, you're also going to work for these people like 3 times longer, 5 times longer, depending, right? So it's going to be lower likelihood you ever get a paycheck, and you're going to work much, much harder for it. I say no to that. I reject that idea.
Like these numbers, aside from being informative in conversations with your seller, it's informative to you. Do not buy a listing. Do not buy a listing. It is just not worth it. With few exceptions. Yeah. So
plenty of topics for you and I to discuss at any point in time. I think we do another one of these soon. I would say to everybody here, do yourself a favor and reach out to Aaron if you like being able to back up your intuition with statistics. His product is really awesome, really amazing. I'm proud to have worked with you on it and hopefully given some good stuff. Pitch for us for a sec. So we have a lot of proprietary tech that we work with, and we are integrating Aaron's tool directly into our tech. So it would be similar to going to Matrix and clicking a button that takes you to his property reports and statistics. We have our own internal tool that is a replacement for Matrix, and our agents will be able to just click a button and get to the property details and click a button and be able to get to statistics. So that's my pitch on our own tools and tech. But definitely it's agentintel.co or Aaron at agentintel.co, and we'll send everybody his info who's here today. And I'll put it on the YouTube description, as well. More requests, join the Raise the Bar group in Facebook if you haven't already. You can reach out to me. I can send you a link, or you can probably find it. More requests. Send us ideas on the stats you'd like to see. Lily said, "Yeah, I'd love to see pools and seasonality. Love to see that." The more ideas we get, the more fun we have, and that's really what this is all about: is fun. So that's what I got. Aaron, anything?
Yeah, like really, what I enjoyed so much about this, and kind of where I think we found our commonality is that there are so many real estate stats out there that are hard to it's like, okay, this is data, but what does it mean? And tell us what you want to know, as what I really enjoy doing with you, what I've been enjoying doing with AgentIntel, is simplifying that data to be able to easily understand and be able to talk to your prospects and clients about this is what it means. As you could look at this data, and there are some naive conclusions that you could come to. Uh, but it is really about determining the meaning in a very simple way.
Yeah, man. What I love, and one of the many reasons that you and I get along so well is that you meet people that communicate, and their entire goal is to like go over people's heads and make themselves sound smart, right? I'm not that smart, so I don't have that goal basically. But your goal is to make sure that things are easily understandable. I think you summarized it once. You said, "Tell stories through beautiful visualizations," and you can't tell a story if people don't understand it. And what you're really good at is putting this data together and then saying like, here's the story that this tells, and here's how you simplify it for your clients. Because otherwise it's worthless. If you show, like a property report to somebody and it's got a bunch of pretty graphs, but you have no idea what it says, what's it for? So I love the fact that you help agents tell stories, and you have to, by definition, help them understand that story before they can actually tell the story. So thank you for also believing that agents are smart. One of my biggest pet peeves in this industry is a lot of tech guys come in and they say, I'm going to teach these dumb agents how to do business. And you certainly don't have that perspective, right? And thank you for that.
Well, I mean, so having been an agent myself, like it's the problem with agents is that we're expected to do it all and to be an expert on everything. And it's not that agents aren't smart. It's frankly that most of the real estate tech out there is trash. I know I'm veering off topic, but it's built by people that have never sold real estate, don't understand the challenges in real estate, and create something that like you as an agent have to come to them to figure out what they're trying to do. There's very few things out there that actually solve day-to-day problems that agents have.
It's either coming up with a solution for a problem that doesn't exist, or saying, oh, you can't use my product. Well, that's your problem, right? And like when you and I've talked about product guys that we admire. I mean, what's the CEO at Perplexity that you talked to me about?
I do not remember his name. It was not one that I could pronounce easily.
But Perplexity is they are positioned to potentially take over Google search, right? Which is insane.
Mm-hmm.
I personally use Perplexity 95% of the time when I need to look for anything now, which to me is totally insane. I didn't think anybody would be able to knock Google off their pedestal. And the reason one of the many reasons he's so successful is that he makes it easy to use. And if somebody can't use his product, he doesn't say, well, that's their problem. He says, oh, that's our problem. We need to make this product usable by everybody that we want to. And I think the example you gave was that his mom is not a native English speaker. And so her queries weren't great because she's trying to do it in English. And he said, oh, well, there's the problem, is that I need to make sure she can just make these queries in her own language and get the result that she wants. So now he's opened up that market. He didn't, alienate this person. And that's what good tech does. And I've watched you, whenever agents have a problem with your tech, you go, cool, how can I make this UI better? How can I make it easier and more intuitive to use? And that's what.
Thank you. I try.
Well, hey, I think we can talk forever if we wanted to, which I would enjoy, but it might be a little bit boring to everybody else. Hey, like the audience isn't dropping off though, which is pretty cool. We'll have this out to everybody. We will have the report out to everybody. As always, we both love feedback. If you don't like the report, tell me why. If you think it missed something, tell us why. If you need more, tell us why. And we'll have a ton of fun, answering those complaints or questions or whatever they are. We'll make it better. So that's what we're here to do. Thank you, guys. We're going to end it now. Aaron, if you want to hang out for a second, we'll let the rest of this upload and we can kind of recap. But Ann asked the question. Sorry, last thing. Ann asked the question, is AgentIntel available in other markets? It's not yet, but go talk to your broker and have your broker contact Aaron. And Aaron is more than willing to take the tech in other markets. In fact, that's his entire goal. But he's doing it at brokerage levels, not on an agent level. So talk to your broker, get your broker in touch with him, and Aaron will get the product to you guys. So thank y'all.
Broker or team level.
Yeah. Or team level, exactly.